Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Just Another Talk. And on this episode, we're going to be talking about Donald Trump almost getting his ass shot off. I want to preface this episode by saying I'm not a political person. I never have been. I am aware of the landscape. I understand the terms. And, I do dabble in what's going on. I keep current is my point. I generally don't lean one way or the other. Both sides have shitty ideas. So really at this point, it's more like navigating a road with a lot of potholes. I'm just not trying to hit a pothole. That's really how I look at our political system at this point in time. Like, that's how I feel. Whether Democrat or Republican, they've either said or done things that not only oppose what they have run on, but also oppose what we, the people, need or even want. Prime example, Ukraine. Some people do, some people don't. Regardless of how you feel about it, Ukraine, you got a boatload of money going to not U.S. citizens. That's really my point on that. And I know you guys didn't come here for Ukraine or any of that. We all know what happened at the rally. Donald Trump was obviously shot at. When it first happened, I immediately got my equipment out and I was gonna record. And then I stopped myself because I wanted to really be thoughtful about what I was gonna say. This is a complicated as well as nuanced situation that has many details that we probably won't figure them all out right away. Today, wasn't the planned day to record this, but I ran into a video that I wanted to show you guys from the congressional hearing of the director of the Secret Service. I believe her last name is Cheeto, if I'm not mistaken, Director Cheeto. And so I think this exchange is pretty interesting between one of the congresswomen and the director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Cheadle, what grade would you give the Secret Service's performance in Butler, Pennsylvania on July 13?
As I've stated, ma'am, this was clearly a failure. I would grade the agents and officers who selflessly threw themselves in front of the president and neutralized the threat an A. I think that we need to examine the events that led up to and prior to that day.
You stated in 2021 that the Secret Service has a zero-fail mission. It's clear that the events of July 13 show a cascade of failures that cost Corey Comparator his life, nearly cost former president his life, and injured David Dutch and James Copenhaver. When an agency fails spectacularly at its mission, those responsible must be held accountable, and the problems must be fixed so they cannot happen again. Why should the American people or the officials you're responsible for protecting have confidence in your ability to lead the Secret Service after such a spectacular failure?
I appreciate the question, and I am committed to finding answers so that we can make the agency stronger after this.
Before I continue on the video, there's two things I want to point out. The first part where she's where she says, I think it's been a complete failure, and we need to examine the events leading up to and before that day, which is interesting because I agree, you do. The bigger point that everyone is missing is okay, you want to know what happened before then. Are you insinuating that it's because, the candidate is inflammatory or says things that might be perceived as certain ways, right? I feel like that answer is a little sketchy to me. It's really? I mean, you had a 20-year-old kid, 150 meters from the candidate who's running against the current president, who you're also protecting? It doesn't make sense. If you want to really be a conspiracy theorist, you can go as far as saying that. And that's not the kind of ideas that I want to point out. But what I do want to point out is the gross negligence that you have. And something that I think most people are missing is the fact that if I gave you a detailed description of what happened on Saturday without giving you any names, just saying, former president running for office was shot at, don't tell you the name of the country or the people running, you would think it's a third world country. You would think I'm talking about somewhere in South America. This is the United States of America, or as how every Dominican uncle would say, the United States. You're telling me that it's okay to be shot at your own rally? Like, put aside the stupid shit Donald Trump has done. Put aside all that stuff. If we talk about the fact that happened, that right there is evidence of a deterioration in our society, period. On multiple levels, not just on the director's level. I'll give you another example. This 20-year-old kid, right? When you look at all accounts and all reports, they say he was smart, he was bullied and stuff like that. And now I'm paraphrasing, at least this is how I understood it from some of the articles I read, as well as some of the interviews that his classmates have given. He's just a little bit weird. Everybody has a weird kid in school. But he's a 20-year-old kid, super smart, and decides to take his dad's AR-15. And he's so smart that he decides to take this AR-15 to probably the one location where if you bring anything that does look like a weapon, or let me rephrase that, to the one location where if you are a threat, you're guaranteed to get laid down. And he shoots at the president? He shoots at and thinks that that's okay? That's a deterioration of our society. He has his whole life ahead of him. He could have went to college. He could have went build a business. He could have done anything. He could have jumped on YouTube. The kid is 20 years old. So he was that level of disenfranchised with his life already at 20 that he was willing to take the shot at Trump. How about the other side? Let's say he does hit him. Because the only way, there's only two ways that 20-year-old does that. Either he's really crazy and mental health plays a big part, or the society or the environment he grew in groomed him to think that he would be a hero for taking him out. What would make you think you're a hero for killing somebody, especially at the stature of somebody running for fucking office? What? Let's think about it. What would it be? What's been the narrative for the last 8 years? Trump is this, Trump is that. Again, I don't want to look like the person who's defending Trump, because I'm not. A lot of things he says I could care less for. But I'm also very realistic, and I'm also very pragmatic. And I can see where there's smoke, there's fire. No one is looking at this from the point of view of what it could have been if this 20-year-old kid actually does take him out. Actually, if he doesn't turn his head at last second. The second point that I want to make about that video is the fact that she was asked to give a grade. And she said she knows it's a complete failure, but the grade she would give her agents is an A+, or an A. And I understand what she's trying to convey, but I think that thought process is the exact problem and the exact reason why I think the kid was able to take a shot at the rally. There are certain jobs you can't be wrong, not once, period, at all, no matter what. The cost is too high. I'll give you an example. District attorney. You can't be wrong. You can't have a moral compass that's not intact. That's not the kind of job that's for you, right? We're not going to go down that hole if the DAs are or not. I'm just pointing out things. A pilot. You can't make mistakes. You just can't. You think if you press the deceleration instead of the acceleration as you get to the end of the tarmac and you crash the plane, you're going to get a second chance? No. So for me, her answer is defensive, and it's worrisome because at that level, if you're challenging the fact that you can acknowledge that there was negligence while performing your duties, but still try to defend it, to me, you're all the way wrong. My grandpa would call that a half right is still wrong. So if you're truly a patriot, which we'll get into next as well, if you're truly a patriot, you'd be like, damn, I fucked that up. Like, he could have died on my watch. Like, go interview the guys. Go look at interviews where they interview the gentlemen who were protecting Kennedy and how they speak about that day and how they literally come to tears. Those are two things I just wanted to point out real quick, but we'll continue with the video.
You said on July 15 that the buck stops with me. How are you taking accountability for the Secret Service's failures during the July 13 assassination attempt on President Trump?
I have taken accountability, and I will continue to take accountability. I am responsible for leading the agency, and I am responsible for finding the answers to how this event occurred and making sure that it doesn't happen again.
So, I know I'll pause it again, but real quick, right at the end, she's like, it's up to me to get the answers on why this happened, and that she just had to throw in there, and it won't happen again. Inching towards, I'm not going to resign. Like, again, the last president to be shot or shot at, even, obviously, besides Kennedy, was Reagan. So, and we haven't had an issue for then. It's been a little bit over 30 years now. I think I want to say Reagan was like 81 or something like that, maybe a little bit later. I'm not exactly sure. But you had this happen on your watch. Like, that's a blemish on your record. I think the next part of this video is really interesting because they get into how she got this job. Let's play this next part.
Is it typical for the director of the Secret Service to be recommended for the role at the behest of a president's family and senior staff, perhaps at the request of Jill Biden or Anthony Bernal?
I got the job as a director of the Secret Service because I spent 27 years in an agency with a mission that I absolutely love. I started my career in Detroit. I worked my way up through investigations and protection.
Was there competition for the position?
You would have to ask those who were involved in the interview process.
But you think you are the best person in the country to head the Secret Service?
Grandma's not holding back.
I think that I am the best person to lead the Secret Service at this time.
In all fairness to Kimberly, she has been with the Secret Service for 27 years. She's held multiple roles. The only thing that I see that's just confusing is she was senior director of global security at Pepsi, and so she was. When I looked up the details, it just seemed like loss prevention. So that's kind of a leap. And then her answer was a little bit vague, like I was in protection and investigations, but okay. I would think you'd name some titles. When you look up her information, it's she started in 1995, and she's worked for multiple presidencies, going all the way back to Bush Jr., the son. So she has some experience, but I think the next portion of the interaction is really interesting, and let's get to it.
Well, those on the front line certainly have a great culture, and they were willing to risk their lives for President Trump. But I'm not sure the leadership at the agency has this right kind of culture. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Chair now recognizes Mr. Conley from Virginia. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Grandma spicy. Yeah, and I don't disagree with Congresswoman Fox, I believe is her last name. I don't disagree with her. I think there's been some oversight. What happened was an issue. This should not happen, especially in our country. And the fact that I believe, my opinion is, she has a little bit of kind of bravado, like, hey, yeah, it happened, but I'm gonna fix it. It's like, these are the kind of things you get one shot at, and that's it, and there's no more, And so I agree with Congresswoman Fox. It's like, yeah, we don't trust you, And again, whether it was Biden, whether it was, a family member of, someone running for office, at the end of the day, the integrity of what our society is based on was attacked. And I think that requires a response from all of us. That's our responsibility, because we live the way we live because of the system that we live in. It has its faults, it has its issues, but it's allowed us to get to where we are now. So why not figure out how to address it versus be polarized like we are, where you have people literally cheering like, oh, I'm so upset they missed. Like, I don't think people generally understand that if Donald Trump would have died, I truly believe there would have been civil war, and people would have lost complete faith in our system, and Civil war means, no supply chains, means you can't just go to the store. It means you got to be careful who you associate with. Never know who's going to come storm in your house. Like, it looks like, strangers coming to grocery shop at your house and you didn't invite them. Like, it's ugly, And another point to this is all the people that have been claiming, at least that I've seen, that are like, oh, I'm so upset that he missed. I can't believe he missed. Like, you had one job. All these people, they have one thing in common. I'm willing to bet they wouldn't know how to defend themselves in a situation where you need to use a rifle or a M15 or a Glock, right? A handgun. I think it's gotten to the point where now, as a society, because we have everything we need and we, for the foreseeable future, can see how we're going to acquire the things we want, and we have the pursuit of happiness, right? That it's deteriorating to the point where people now are challenging the fabrics, the simple fabrics of what our reality is. And that's where you get into repeating your past, right? You think about all kinds of kingdoms that have fallen before. And we talk about that all the time, right? So are we headed in that direction? We were a 2-2-3 round away from total chaos. And that's my opinion. Just because I see how people are moving, what people are thinking, and it's a little bit scary. It's daunting. I'm a man. I can handle myself. I can figure things out. But in a civil war, the first people affected are the people who can't defend themselves. Like, I'm thinking about my mom. I'm thinking about my grandma. I'm thinking about, the older family members in my life who can't just get up and go. Right? So these are things that I think are ultimately leading to that. And I kind of sidetracked a little bit, but I want to get to this last portion in the video. This portion just goes to show you what it looks like, from my opinion, as no accountability or someone not being held accountable. And I'll let you guys decide.
Chair now recognize Mr. Conley from Virginia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I hope the American people do appreciate the incredible daily risks Secret Service agents take on our behalf. You mentioned there are 36 regular clients you've got that you protect constantly, but I was participating in the NATO summit just 2 weeks ago. We had 32 heads of government and heads of state, plus visiting heads of state and heads of government. Presumably, you provided protection for all of them.
That is correct.
Just saying. Help us understand, however, I will stipulate that there's an ongoing investigation. You don't want to go into too much detail on that until you've been able to ascertain all the facts and analyze what they mean.
Your Honor, he's leading the
You can understand, however, the anxiety we and the American public have about how could this happen and how can we ensure it can't recur. Now, there are some things my friends on one particular side of the aisle don't really want to talk about, like AR-15s and access to them by a 20-year-old, or anybody for that matter.
There's his dad's.
Presumably, Director Cheadle, the ubiquity of weapons, guns in America, especially assault weapons or semi-automatic weapons.
I don't want to keep it going because he goes into a tangent about guns and stuff like that. And so my point is just to highlight the beginning of his interaction, Mr. Connolly, right? And it was, well, we know you have a tough job and you're doing the best you can. Some jobs you can't do the best you can. You got to do it 100% every time or people die. Or you get what happens now, which is, I mean, it's pretty bad. The point that I'm trying to make is that I'm not necessarily the kind of person who's like, oh, you need to lose your job, or that's it, you're calling for their firing. Even though I did call for the firing of the DA who wouldn't stop for the cop, but that's neither here nor there. But my point is, in this situation at this kind of level, there should not be these many questions. And when there is, regardless of why, good reason or not good reason, the leader, the person who's the director, the head of this department, is the one who has to pay the consequences. And we don't know what's going to come of this. Obviously, there's still a bunch of details coming out, and there's still a bunch of things happening. So, this is kind of a fluid situation. And more news is definitely going to come out, and we're going to figure out what, we're going to get more accurate reports of what happened. My ultimate point of making this video is because I live in this country. I was born in this country. I am American. Regardless of what my parents are, regardless of how I grew up in the culture that I have adopted, I am American. My passport is American. The assassination attempt, regardless of who was on that podium talking at that rally, whether it would have been Biden or Trump or anybody in general, anyone from our political system whose life is attempted on, is a direct assault on what we have in this country. Now, I'm the first one to agree that our political system sucks. They have bad ideas. It's slow. Term limits, lobbying firms. I'm all with that. I'm with those conversations. I'm willing to have those. But what happened, the assassination attempt on someone who's running for office, especially the highest office, is something we all should be worried about, because Donald Trump dying may not directly affect your heart, but I promise you it will directly affect your wallet and your quality of life immediately. Not just Donald Trump. Remember, I know I said Donald Trump, but I mean it in the sense of anybody who would have been standing there running for president, the highest office in the land. I don't want to make this episode too long. I think you guys get my point. And I'd love to hear what you guys think in the comments. Definitely drop a comment. I know it's been some time that I uploaded. I have a lot of moving parts, so we're getting everything situated. I got Alex behind the camera right now, so, we're building our team. Things are moving. But I promise you guys I'm going to bring you more stuff. And don't forget, check the merch store. It's out. We got the stuff up there. And you know what? Just for this episode, I'm going to drop the Dominican Uncle t-shirt, Junarez Day. If you agree with my thoughts or if you disagree with my thoughts, I want to know. Drop a comment, like, share, subscribe. Tronald dumb.